He never ran a charter. He never wore a patch. Yet somehow, Dave Mann became the lens through which the outlaw world came into focus. Long before documentaries, podcasts, or tell-all memoirs, there were his centerfolds, 30 years of Easy Riders spread steeped in smoke, chrome, and silence. Mann painted bikers as they wanted to be seen, not as criminals, but as ghosts, cowboys, knights, wolves. Outlaws with codes. Loners with pride. Machines as their horses. Some critics said he revealed too much. Others swore he made bikers look better than they deserved. But Mann didn't take sides. He painted what he saw and let the world wrestle with it. He wasn't chasing legend. He was preserving one. This is the story of the man behind the mythology, and the cost of keeping it alive. Biker World's Mythmaker. Before he became the Biker World's Mythmaker, Dave Mann was just a Kansas City kid with a paintbrush and an eye for chrome. Motorcycles weren't his first obsession, custom cars were. By his late teens, he was spraying paint in auto shops and sketching hot rods anywhere he could find space. Women, wheels, flames. It was style without story, until the story came looking for him. In 1963, Mann brought a handful of canvases to the Kansas City Custom Car Show. One stood out, Hollywood Run. The painting stopped Tom Fugel, a biker with an artist's eye, dead in his tracks. He snapped a photo of the piece and sent it to Ed Big Daddy Roth, publisher of Choppers magazine. Roth didn't hesitate, he commissioned Mann for a poster series. It was Mann's first national stage, and his first taste of the biker world's loyalty. Dave poured himself into the Roth series, nearly 30 posters in all. Look closely at one of those mid-60s prints and you'll spot his hidden signature, tucked into the frame of a bike. By 1965, he wasn't just painting bikers, he was riding with them. He joined El Forastero Motorcycle Club, becoming a founding member of its Kansas City charter. What began as observation turned into immersion. His sketchbook never left his side. In 1971, Mann answered a small ad in the back of a new magazine. Easy Riders was looking for a motorcycle artist. His submission was accepted. By 1973, his work had claimed the center spread, a place it would hold every month for the next 3 decades. But Mann wasn't selling a fantasy. He painted contradictions. Lone riders mirrored against medieval knights. Choppers haunted by gunfighters. Surreal highways with ghostly passengers. Cops lurking in judgment. Husbands seething with jealousy. His art didn't flatter, didn't flirt, it told the truth. By the mid-1970s, Dave Mann had given outlaw bikers a visual language they couldn't escape. His work filled garages, clubhouses, tattoo shops, and bedrooms. Some embraced the reflection. Others felt exposed. He didn't soften edges. He didn't ask permission. He just kept painting, because he wasn't documenting rebellion. He was building its mythology, one brushstroke at a time. By the early 1970s, Dave Mann had become the visual identity of Easy Riders. Every month, the centerfold carried his painted stories, dreamlike, symbolic, and soaked in exhaust. He never recycled an idea. He never rushed a line. His work was precise, surreal, and loaded with meaning. A biker beside a ghostly knight, a trucker squaring off with a cop, lovers in motion, enemies cast in chrome. Mann wasn't just part of the magazine. He became part of its crew. He built close bonds inside the biker world, though those same bonds often drew him into conflict. At one point, he was petitioned to design a poster for the film Hell's Angels Forever. The project unraveled in controversy over ownership and control, but Mann's poster, Busting Out, survived. Today, it's considered a rare piece of his legacy. Complicated feelings. To most readers, Dave was untouchable, the artist who gave outlaw bikers their myth. But inside clubhouses, feelings were more complicated. His paintings didn't just capture the culture, they captured them, the clothes, the stares, the unspoken tension. Some believed he lifted faces and moments straight from runs, meetings, and stories that were never meant to leave the Brotherhood. And worse, he made them beautiful. One of his early works depicted a brawl on Ventura Beach, an actual fight, reimagined in oil and color. To outsiders it looked like art. To insiders, it was memory exposed. Quiet questions started to circulate. Was Dave showing too much? Was he getting too close to outsiders? Was he mythologizing what should have remained unspoken? No one confronted him directly, but the respect became cautious. Some called him loyal. Others whispered he was dangerous. He heard both, and kept painting. His allegiance to the El Forasteros was never doubted, but when he helped form a new charter with Tom Fugel, tension followed. Accounts differ, some say he walked away, others say he was pushed. What's certain is that he left the club on bad terms, with heavy criticism aimed at his work. Many bikers thought his centerfolds revealed too much of the outlaw world. Still, the paintings kept coming. Bolder. More symbolic. More layered. His art shifted from documenting culture to reflecting it, the outlaw as cowboy, as ghost, as legend and contradiction. That duality became his signature, and his risk. An insider with outsider reach. Some bikers hid his posters. Others framed them proudly. The unease around his work deepened. Rumors spread, some even muttered about cutting off his painting hand. Whether true or not, man never addressed it. He never slowed down. He knew what he was doing, not just painting motorcycles, but painting what it felt like to live beyond the rules, even if it meant burning bridges with the very men he rode beside. In the end, it wasn't betrayal or backlash that silenced Dave Mann. It was his body. By the early 2000s, his health was failing. He held on as long as he could, every new centerfold another act of loyalty, another month stitching the mythology together. In 2003, after 30 years of uninterrupted work, he finally set down the brush. The following year, just one day after his 64th birthday, Dave Mann died. But his tribute had already begun. Orange County Choppers was building a custom bike in his honor, styled in Mann's sweeping lines, with fire airbrushed across the frame, a rolling canvas of the stories he told without words. He never lived to see it completed. The episode aired with his name on it. Dave Mann had not just painted rebellion. He had kept its mythology alive. The bike rolled on without him, and in that moment, the man who had painted legends became one himself. His ashes were destined for a Harley Sportster XLCH, finished in a shade known only as Dave Mann Red. It was fitting. His work was never meant to sit quietly on walls. It was built to move, to live, to ride. Motorcycle Hall of Fame. After his passing, his place in the culture only deepened. In 2004, he was inducted into the Motorcycle Hall of Fame. That same year, a new gathering was born in his honor, the Dave Mann Chopper Fest in Ventura, California. Painters, builders, riders, and storytellers still gather there beneath his silhouette, keeping alive the spirit he gave shape to with brush and paint. Today, his originals fetch thousands, some climbing into the $25,000 to $30,000 range. Easy Riders posters, once tacked to clubhouse walls and garage doors, have become prized artifacts. But the truth is, Dave never painted for profit. His work was about something deeper: memory, testimony, legacy. He painted what others kept hidden, what some feared to admit. He held up a mirror to a world bound by secrecy, loyalty, and code, and transformed it into homage rather than exposure. The same clubs that once questioned his loyalty now celebrate his vision. And though Dave Mann never wore the top patch or ran a table, he left behind something no patch ever could: proof of the road itself. Proof of what it felt like to ride inside the myth, before the myth even had a name. Dark history of bikers. A month later, Trudeau successfully killed the real Roxy Dumaresque with a car bomb. He also assassinated high-ranking outlaw Brian Powers by knocking on his door and shooting him 9 times in the head when he answered. When Bao heard rumors that a small biker gang called the Huns was planning to patch over to the Outlaws, he sent Trudeau to intervene. Trudeau knocked on the Huns leader's door and killed him with a single gunshot to the head. As the war continued, the Angels Montreal chapter grew rapidly. To manage this growth, Bao decided to split the group, creating a new chapter in Laval, north of Montreal. The North chapter was composed mainly of former Popeyes and quickly developed a reputation for hard partying and drug use. The original chapter, now known as the South chapter, consisted of newer members who were more disciplined and organized. Trudeau was assigned to the North chapter, where his drug use spiraled out of control. At one point, he reportedly consumed $660,000 worth of cocaine in a single weekend. This behavior was typical of the North chapter, whose members frequently consumed the drugs they were supposed to sell and embezzled profits from their operations. Relations between the North and South chapters began to deteriorate steadily, but for the time being, both sides remained united against the Outlaws. By 1980, just 3 years into the war, an astonishing 30 people had been killed as both sides rebuilt their strength. Bao turned his attention to internal matters, becoming convinced that an angel named André Desjardins was informing the police. In February of that year, Trudeau broke into Desjardins' home and killed his elderly mother. He then ambushed Desjardins and his girlfriend, killing them both and disposing of all 3 bodies in the St. Lawrence River. Another delicate situation arose involving Frank Ryan, leader of the West End Gang and a key ally. Ryan revealed that 2 North Chapter Angels had racked up a significant drug debt with his organization and were conspiring to kidnap his children to negotiate the debt's cancellation. Ryan's gang controlled the port of Montreal, the Angels' main drug supply route. He demanded that Bao have the 2 Angels killed or face the termination of their supply. Biker assassin Trudeau, close friends with the 2 men, lured them out for drinks, got them drunk, and then executed them in a secluded area. In 1981 and 1982, the Angels gained further ground in the war, with nearly 50 more people, mostly outlaws, killed during this period. As the Angels approached total victory, Bao implemented new rules, banning all Angels from using drugs. He believed addiction made his men unreliable and prone to consuming their own supply. While the South Chapter adhered to the rule, the North Chapter, led by Trudeau and others, largely ignored it, continuing their drug abuse. During this time, Bao negotiated deals that expanded the Angels into British Columbia, gaining control of the lucrative port of Vancouver. He also began talks with the Kitchener chapter of Satan's Choice, inviting a representative to Montreal to discuss patching over to the Angels. On September 8, 1983, Bao met with Guy Gilbert of the Kitchener chapter at a Montreal restaurant. As the 3 men, including another Angel, smoked cigarettes in the parking lot, a 22-year-old outlaw's associate named Gino Gidone approached and opened fire with a .38 caliber handgun. Gilbert and Bao were killed. Bao's funeral later that year saw over 150 Angels from Canada, the United States, and Europe in attendance. The day after the funeral, a young boy discovered a camouflaged bomb planted along the funeral procession route. The bomb squad determined it had malfunctioned and believed it was planted by the outlaws. Despite Bao's death, the Angels remained dominant. By mid-1984, they had inflicted severe losses on the outlaws, including assassinating their Montreal chapter president and 5 top lieutenants. This forced the outlaws to retreat from Quebec, leaving the Angels victorious and in full control of the province's drug trade. However, internal divisions began to fracture the group. The North Chapter, notorious for its rampant drug abuse and erratic behavior, had become a liability, causing growing tensions with the more disciplined South Chapter. It was believed that the North Chapter of the Hells Angels was making the gang look bad. A crime reporter told the Montreal Gazette newspaper, at that moment, the Hells Angels were doing a cleanup to become a real criminal organization. Before that, they were disorganized and unruly, they were like a street gang. The North Chapter guys weren't following the steps the others were taking. They fit the traditional image of bikers. It was going against the new philosophy of the Hells Angels. The other Hells Angels wanted to be businessmen. Bao's death. Under Bao's leadership, the gang had been prohibited from using drugs, a rule that many members, including Trudeau, regularly broke. However, with Bao's death, the North Chapter's problems quickly spun out of control. In addition to drug abuse and embezzlement, the North Chapter members were frequently arrested by police for minor offenses, threatening the entire Hells Angels operation in Quebec. Their actions also drew ire from allies in the West End Gang and the Montreal Mafia, who began pressuring the organization to rein in the North Chapter. As the North Chapter's reputation deteriorated, Hells Angels from across Canada and the United States demanded action. The final straw came when Peter Carroll, president of the Halifax chapter, paid Trudeau $90,000 to help smuggle drugs from Montreal to Halifax. Instead of procuring the drugs, Trudeau used the money to buy cocaine for himself. Enraged, Carroll personally traveled to Montreal to meet Ron Lard, the leader of the South Chapter. During their meeting, Carroll demanded action against Trudeau. To his surprise, Lard agreed and spent most of the meeting ranting about how Trudeau and the North Chapter were, in his words, a menace and a threat to the existence of the Hells Angels in Quebec. Eventually, they agreed that the North Chapter needed to be liquidated. In March 1985, a secret meeting was called, where the North Chapter was declared to be in bad standing. It was the first and only time in Hells Angels history that an entire chapter was marked for death. Lard and Carroll devised a plan to invite the North Chapter to a party at the Sherbrooke Clubhouse. Members from both Montreal chapters, as well as the Sherbrooke and Halifax chapters, were to attend. Attendance was mandatory, but Trudeau, sensing something was wrong, checked himself into a rehab facility the day before the party. The remaining North Chapter members attended the party, where they were ambushed by Lard and 40 other Hells Angels. The 8 remaining members were forced into a small room in the clubhouse, where 5 were shot and killed. The surviving 3 were ordered to clean up the scene and wash away the blood. After their work was done, Lard told 2 of the survivors they could retire from the Hells Angels. The third man was given the choice to join the South Chapter, which he readily accepted. While in rehab, Trudeau was visited by 2 Hells Angels who told him he would be spared if he killed 3 of Lard's enemies. The first target was the North Chapter's former accountant, whom Trudeau strangled. However, before he could kill the other 2, he was arrested on weapons charges. While in custody, Trudeau heard rumors that the Hells Angels had put a $50,000 contract on his head. To save himself, he became a police informant and agreed to testify in court. He provided investigators with detailed information that solved 90 murders and led to the imprisonment of 19 high-ranking Hells Angels members. This created a power vacuum within the Hells Angels. Walter Stadnik, the most senior Canadian member not in prison, was named the new national president. Stadnik appointed Maurice "Mom" Boucher as his Quebec lieutenant. Boucher would later instigate the Quebec Biker War, the deadliest biker war in history. While working with investigators, Trudeau admitted to committing 43 murders. In exchange for his testimony, the 43 murder charges against him were reduced to manslaughter. As part of the deal, Trudeau was paid $40,000 by the government and sentenced to 7 years to life in prison. He was released on parole after just 9 years. Trudeau later died in 2008 from bone marrow cancer. Birth of the Hells Angels. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club is one of the most famous groups and easily the largest motorcycle club in the world, with a membership of over 6,467 chapters in 59 different countries. You might be wondering what makes this motorcycle club so special. Well, there are several reasons why anyone would want to join the Hells Angels. While a love of motorcycles is easily one of the most common motives, a sense of belonging, especially in an infamous club once shrouded in an aura of mystery and respect, is another. From a distance, the Hells Angels seem so cool, and it's easy for many to be enticed into wanting to join. However, joining this club isn't for the faint-hearted. Since many do not make the cut, becoming a full member of the Hells Angels can take a really long time, sometimes spanning years. To become a member of the Hells Angels, candidates are first expected to be true motorcycle enthusiasts. They must also own a valid driver's license and a motorcycle of over 750 cubic centimeters, as the average member is expected to ride at least 20,000 kilometers a year in strict formation. Candidates are also required to drive US-built motorcycles, with Harley-Davidson, Indian, and Victory being the most common brands. Prospective. Members who have applied to be law enforcement officers, such as prison guards or police, are excluded from the club. Child molesters are also not allowed. The initiation process starts with the candidate passing the above criteria. Once that is out of the way, the candidate, now considered a prospective member, enters the stage of being deemed a hangaround. As a hangaround, prospective members are invited to meet older club members at some club meetings, and this stage could last for a long time. If the hangaround still shows interest at this stage, they are then deemed an associate. They remain classified this way for a year or 2. After these years pass, an associate is reclassified as a prospect and is now allowed to fully participate in some of the club's activities. However, they do not have voting privileges since the initiation process is still underway. If the prospect proves they have what it takes, they are then upgraded to full membership or full patch, which is the last phase of the initiation process. The full patch refers to the club's 4-piece insignia given to its members. This includes the Death Head logo, 2 rockers, a top rocker with the words Hells Angels, and a bottom rocker showing the country, state, or charter location. Rectangular MC patch beneath the wings of the Death Head signifies Motorcycle Club. Prospects are only allowed to wear the bottom rocker along with the MC patch. The final stage of becoming a full member begins with the voting process. A prospect can only become a full member, or full patch, when they are unanimously voted in by all full members of the club. Hence, a prospect is often required to travel across chapters in their country and introduce themselves to other members. Voting becomes easier once these members have gotten to know the prospect and have vetted them. The prospect must receive 100% of the votes, as a single vote against them means the prospecting stage continues until they are fully voted in. Once they have been voted in, prospects are required to reaffirm their loyalty to the club, and the Hells Angels rocker is finally awarded to them as the final part of the initiation ceremony. At this stage, known as being patched, prospects become full members. Full members of the Hells Angels are recognized by their infamous insignia, the full patch, but this remains the property of the club, not the member, even after the initiation process. The club's official colors are red lettering on a white background, leading to the nickname, the Red and White. Members wear their patches on leather or denim jackets and vests. Some members wear an AFFA patch, meaning Angels Forever, Forever Angels, indicating lifelong membership. Another patch consists of two Nazi-style SS lightning bolts beneath the words, Filthy Few, worn by select members. According to the club, this patch is a type of merit badge awarded to members who are first to arrive at and last to leave a party. However, some law enforcement officers allege that this patch is worn by members who have committed or are willing to commit murder on behalf of the club. In some cases, members may wear patches that signify their rank within the organization. These small, rectangular patches display the titles of the members in red letters on a white background. Common titles include President, Sergeant-at-Arms, Treasurer, Vice President, and more. If a member is ejected from the club or chooses to leave, they are required to return their patches to the club. Members are expected to pay dues that finance burials and motorcycle runs. Attendance at club meetings and motorcycle runs is also mandatory. Contrary to popular belief, most Hells Angels members are not drug addicts. The club prohibits intravenous drug use, and many members are known to be fitness enthusiasts. According to Jay Dobbins, an investigative agent who went undercover and infiltrated the Hells Angels from 2001 to 2003, the club has strict rules concerning interactions with women. Wives or girlfriends of members are strictly off-limits, and violations of this rule are met with severe, often violent, consequences. Dobbins also mentioned that members are not allowed to speak to one another while wearing sunglasses. Additionally, members must remove their riding gloves before shaking hands. Prospects are forbidden from patting a member's back or touching the Hells Angels patch, with severe consequences for breaking this rule. Those who leave the club on bad terms have all possessions related to the club taken away from them, including the removal of tattoos that indicate club affiliation. Prospects, along with members' girlfriends and wives, are allowed to wear the number 81, which stands for Support 81, with 8 representing H and 1 representing A. The Hells Angels do not have an overall president. Instead, the club is governed by regional officers representing localized chapters at monthly meetings. These chapters have a degree of autonomy regarding minor policy changes and member discipline. Rankings in the club's organization include President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, Sergeant-at-Arms, and Road Captain, each carrying out significant duties. Responsibilities within their chapters vary, and regional officers are divided into 2 groups. The first group comprises those who attend the West Coast Officers Meeting, also known as WESCOM. The WESCOM group is charged with conducting the policy actions and affairs of the Hells Angels chapters in the Western United States. The second group includes those who attend the East Coast Officers Meeting, or ECOM, which governs the chapters in the Eastern United States. Although the Hells Angels' founding location was in San Bernardino, California, its unofficial founding location eventually moved to Oakland, California, under the leadership of Sonny Barger, who succeeded Otto Friedli as the de facto national president. This shift made the Oakland chapter one of the most prominent and regarded as first among equals, due to Barger's reputation. The Oakland chapter has the largest membership of any chapter in the United States and is responsible for major decision-making within the club. Any other motorcycle club wishing to be affiliated with the Hells Angels must first apply to the Oakland chapter for membership and be monitored and approved by them before being granted membership. The Hells Angels' traditional motto is Angels Forever, Forever Angels. They also have other slogans, such as, When we do right, nobody remembers. When we do wrong, nobody forgets. 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead, and, when in doubt, knock them out, the latter coined by New York City chapter member Vincent Big Vinny Girolamo. Joining the Hells Angels is far from easy. Prospective members often spend years on a waitlist and devote their remaining years as full members to the club. The Hells Angels are not a casual, recreational group. For many members, joining is one of the best experiences of their lives, but leaving the club is a different matter altogether. Members can only leave if they are expelled, as there is no concept of retirement, except in rare cases where certain members are allowed to depart. Still, some have taken the daring step to leave. One notable example is George Christie. I felt we became the people we rebelled against, and that's exactly what I told them at the meeting when I left, Christie said. At one time, we would interact with all the clubs up and down the coast, and by 2011 we were fighting every major outlaw bike club in the United States, plus law enforcement. That's where some people lost perspective of what the initial intent was of the whole outlaw lifestyle. It seemed more military, like an army fighting another army. Christie was a Hells Angels leader for 35 years out of a 40-year membership. He was drawn to the outlaw biker lifestyle as a kid in the mid-1950s when he first saw a long-haired, denim-jacketed biker riding through the streets without a care in the world. Christie described that moment as life-changing. What truly fueled his interest, however, was an incident during high school when his principal accused him of cheating because he scored highly on an IQ test. Christie, who did poorly in school, thought, "If this is a polite society, no thank you," as he left the principal's office. After high school, Christie joined the Marine Corps. When he was discharged, he bought a motorcycle and started hanging out with other biker groups, such as the Satan Slaves and Question Marks, though his ultimate dream was to join the Hells Angels. By 1976, Christie had become a full-patch member, and soon after, he rose in rank, founding the Ventura, California chapter in 1978 and even carrying the Olympic torch during the 1984 Los Angeles Games. Despite being a high-ranking member, Christie also worked for the Department of Defense. In 1978, his co-workers discovered he was a Hells Angels leader, a fact that came to light during a brutal conflict with a rival group involving fights, shootings, and bombings, which led to his resignation. Trouble followed Christie. He was later charged with orchestrating a murder-for-hire plot involving a leader of the Mexican Mafia prison gang. While in prison, Christie learned that rival clubs did not fight each other behind bars, which motivated him to push for peace on the streets. By the time he was acquitted in 1987, Christie had already started negotiating peace between rival motorcycle clubs. His efforts seemed successful until the 2002 Laughlin River Run, an annual motorcycle rally in Nevada, where a brawl between the Mongols and Hells Angels left 3 people dead. By 2011, the Hells Angels were embroiled in conflicts with nearly every major outlaw motorcycle club and law enforcement. Christie wanted the wars to end, but others did not share his vision. "I felt that groups were fracturing off, doing their own thing, if you will. It was tough," he said. "I decided that if I stayed in the club, it would strictly be ego-driven. I didn't want to be the guy who used to be a Hells Angels leader." In 2011, Christie made his decision to leave. He walked into a club meeting, announced his departure, removed his patches, and laid them on the table. His final words to his former club members were, "We have become the people that we rebelled against. And I'm gone." While Christie argued that he followed protocols and formally quit the club, it appeared that attempting to leave was a mistake. He was soon accused of being an informant, and his status was changed to out bad, meaning he was no longer in good standing with the Hells Angels and could not have any relations or contact with other members. In essence, he had been excommunicated from the club. Christie claimed he was shamed on social media and faced accusations from people, including strangers. The sense of kinship and community that had initially spurred Christie to join the outlaw biker lifestyle was stripped from him simply because he chose to leave. In an interview, Christie was asked why being out bad still seemed to bother him. His response was, "Being out bad with no contact in the outlaw motorcycle world is like a stigma. They don't want people interacting with you, they don't want people talking to you. Club members who I was friendly with after I left had their memberships in jeopardy if they communicated with me." He continued, "When I left, it kind of reminded me of a divorce. At first, everyone wanted to be amiable, they weren't happy about my decision, but they understood it. As things progressed, it became aggressive, and it was hard to take. The phone rings, and you pick up, and it's one of your former brothers telling you you're no longer a friend to us. That's my whole life because I didn't have many friends outside the club. It was a hard pill to swallow." George Christie wasn't the only one to suffer this tragic fate after leaving the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. "My name is Jay Dobbins. I'm a retired undercover federal agent, and I infiltrated the Hells Angels," said Jay Dobbins, who infiltrated the Hells Angels between 2001 and 2003. Dobbins, a former football player and athlete, decided to join the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, after surviving a critical shooting during an operation in 1987. By 2002, when the war between the Hells Angels and the Mongols was at its peak, federal law enforcement launched an undercover operation called Operation Black Biscuit. Dobbins, posing as a gun runner and debt collector, went by the name Jay Davis and was known to gang members as Jaybird. Dobbins staged a fake murder to gain the Hells Angels' trust. A law enforcement officer posed as a Mongols biker, covered in lamb blood and brains, and was laid in a shallow grave for photographs and videos. Dobbins mailed a blood-stained Mongols patch to the Hells Angels, impressing the leadership so much that they immediately voted him as a fully patched member of the Mesa, Arizona charter, although they later denied this. Unfortunately, as Dobbins moved up the ranks, the lifestyle began to strain his family life. "I had an argument with my wife. At one point, I came home after being away for an extended period. I walked in like Jaybird Davis walks into my house, and she's like, "You cannot be gone and come here and treat me and our kids like we're street people." Despite acknowledging that the Hells Angels could be dangerous, Dobbins admitted to respecting some members. After his true identity was revealed in 2004, the Hells Angels felt betrayed and directed their threats at his family. Plans to inject him with HIV, gang rape his wife and daughter, and kidnap and murder his son were uncovered. The ATF downplayed the threats, claiming no one had forced Dobbins to go undercover. Even when an arson attack occurred at his Tucson, Arizona home with his family inside, the Bureau didn't take the threat seriously. Though his family survived, their home and belongings were destroyed. Dobbins filed and won a lawsuit against the ATF in 2014. He later wrote a book, No Angel: My Harrowing Undercover Journey to the Inner Circle of the Hells Angels, which became a New York Times bestseller. The book detailed the Hells Angels investigation and its impact on his career and life. Despite the tragic events following his departure, Dobbins now runs a company focused on law enforcement training. Finally, there is the case of David LaBrava. Unlike others who faced hardship after leaving the Hells Angels, LaBrava left in good standing. Known for his role as Happy Loman in the FX series Sons of Anarchy, LaBrava was a real-life member of the Hells Angels. Initially hired as a technical advisor for the show in 2008 to ensure accurate depictions of a motorcycle club, he was later given a role and portrayed the hitman Happy Loman. LaBrava stayed with the Hells Angels until 2019, when he announced his departure via an Instagram post. "I want to say I am no longer a member of the largest motorcycle club in the world, the Hells Angels MC. The only club I'm a member of now is the human race," he wrote. He added that it was his own decision to leave and that he was no longer a patch holder, considering himself a civilian. Unlike others, LaBrava's exit was amicable, and he has had no negative experiences with the club since. Non-bikers might not understand the allure of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, but motorcycle enthusiasts are often in awe of the club, eager to join. This respect is linked to the club's storied history. According to the Hells Angels official website, the first club was founded on March 17, 1948, in Fontana, San Bernardino, California. Before then, various motorcycle clubs existed independently. Otto Friedli, a World War II veteran, was credited with founding the club after breaking away from the Pissed Off Bastards Motorcycle Club due to a feud with a rival gang. Another theory suggests that the Hells Angels was founded on November 15, 1951, by Dick White in San Bernardino. White was said to be a member of the Redlands Roadrunners. The club attributes its name to Arvid Olsen, an acquaintance of the founders who served in the Hells Angel squadron of the Flying Tigers during World War II. The club's official colors, red and white, and its charter, allegedly drawn up in 1950, reflect this heritage. Chapters began to emerge across California, operating independently. The San Francisco chapter formed in 1954, followed by North Sacramento in 1956. Sonny Barger took over leadership from Friedli and created the Oakland chapter in 1957, uniting the chapters under common bylaws. The Hells Angels expanded beyond California, opening an international chapter in New Zealand in 1961. On July 30, 1969, two London chapters were formed, and by 1973, they merged into the London Charter. Canada followed in 1977 with a chapter in Montreal, expanding to other parts of Quebec. However, the Hells Angels didn't quite succeed in taking over the Quebec biking scene without interference, as there was a violent turf war that left over 160 dead, 300 injured, and over 100 bikers incarcerated. By the end of the 70s, the club already had charters in Australia, and in 1984, Rio de Janeiro had its chapter, making it the first South American country with a HAMC charter. By 1993, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club had spread across continents and was launched in Johannesburg, South Africa. Turkey became the first Muslim country to have a Hells Angels chapter in 2009. Now, the club has a membership of over 6,467 chapters across 59 countries, making it the largest motorcycle club in the world. However, there was still a veil of mystery over the club, as many from the outside weren't quite sure what went on within. Sometimes, the Hells Angels are depicted as free-spirited men bound by brotherhood and loyalty. On the other hand, they are also depicted as a violent criminal gang, and the murder of an 18-year-old concert-goer by one of their members didn't help this reputation. Hells Angels members were essentially known as drug addicts and barroom fighters. However, law enforcement and intelligence agencies like the United States Department of Justice, the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Criminal Intelligence Service Canada, and even Europol all considered the Hells Angels an organized crime syndicate. Although the Hells Angels claim not to be a racially segregated club, members are often white men. According to Sonny Barger in a 2000 BBC interview, the club as a whole is not racist, but we probably have enough racist members that no black guy is going to get in it. He also said, if you're a motorcycle rider and you're white, you want to join the Hells Angels. If you're black, you want to join the East Bay Dragons. That's how it is, whether anyone likes it or not. We don't have no blacks, and they don't have no whites. While Barger claims the Hells Angels weren't racist, a 1983 incident proved otherwise. The Satan's Angels Motorcycle Club in Vancouver had a black member before it decided to merge with the Hells Angels in 1983. However, the San Francisco and Anchorage chapters threatened to expel the Vancouver chapter when they learned there was a black member. The issue was only resolved when the man decided to change his nationality to Hawaiian. In another case, a chapter in Windsor, England, was only granted official status in 1985 after its only black member had died in police custody. In their support, an African-American biker group known as the Chosen Few Motorcycle Club stated in a 1996 Ebony article that they didn't perceive any racial animosity from members of the Hells Angels. They also said they allowed members of the Hells Angels into their territory, where everyone parties and gets together. The Hells Angels echoed this, stating, "We don't have any Negro members," but maintained that it was because no black individuals had sought membership. It is unclear why many people joined the Hells Angels, but one common factor seems to be a sense of community. In the case of former leader George Christie, he had been drawn by the free-spiritedness of the members and wanted to be part of this close-knit community of bikers. Undercover agent Jay Dobbins also hinted at this as one of the reasons why he respected members of the club. In a law enforcement conference in El Paso, Dobbins said that the Hells Angels, even with their fearsome reputations, offered members a sense of belonging in society. "You can be, in essence, an unimportant, unknown person," Dobbins said. "When you join one of those gangs and they put that patch on your back, all of a sudden people are paying attention to you. People are buying you drinks, people are giving you drugs, women want to put their arm around your shoulder, you're intimidating, you scare people, and to some people, that's intoxicating," he said. Therefore, it is little wonder why George Christie appeared slightly hurt by this loss of community when he was declared out bad by the club. Another thing that stands out about the Hells Angels is how seriously they expect loyalty from members. Christie appeared to have betrayed the club by leaving, and they made sure he paid for this by not only isolating him from the community but also ensuring the general public saw him in a negative light. He even went on to serve prison time for crimes he had committed earlier, 3 years after he left the Hells Angels. The same thing played out with Dobbins when he was revealed to be an undercover agent. The threats were just a way for the club to show their disappointment at the betrayal. Despite these acts unveiling the dark side of the Hells Angels, they maintain that they are not a criminal or violent organization. Members of the club continue to assert that they are only a group of motorcycle enthusiasts from all over the world who want to ride motorcycles together and organize social events. They insist that crimes committed by any member of the Hells Angels are the sole responsibility of the parties involved and not the club as a whole. Even though the Hells Angels insist on being a social group, there are several instances that have shown the violent nature of the club. First is the tragic case of Meredith Curly Hunter Jr., the 18-year-old American who was stabbed to death by a member of the Hells Angels at the 1969 Altamont Free Concert. What makes the death of Meredith Hunter most unfortunate was that the incident was caught on camera and became a central scene in the documentary Gimme Shelter by the Mays-Les brothers. 18-year-old Hunter was a bubbly teen from Berkeley, California, known for his flashy dress and hard-to-miss afro. In 1969, he attended the infamous Altamont Free Concert with his white, blonde girlfriend, a friend, and his girlfriend, traveling from Berkeley to the event. His sister, Dixie, had warned him not to attend, as racism was still prevalent in the outer reaches of Alameda County. However, Hunter shrugged it off but armed himself with a .22 Smith & Wesson revolver just in case he needed protection. It's important to note that the unfortunate incident at the Altamont Free Concert could have been avoided had the event been well planned. There were hundreds of thousands of people at the venue, and the stage was set so low that the crowd pressed in, making the stage look small and uncomfortable. Members of the Hells Angels present at the concert saw this and took advantage of the situation, offering to prevent artists from being approached by overzealous fans who attempted to get on the stage. All they needed in exchange for this service was $500 worth of beer. They parked their motorcycles in front of the stage and ensured no one tried to get close. By the time the Rolling Stones mounted the stage later that night, the crowd had become restless and was pressing on the stage. The Hells Angels, already drunk, began throwing their empty beer cans at the restless crowd, which further increased the tension in the air. The lead singer, Mick Jagger, had to pause and speak to the crowd, urging them to calm down and stop pushing. "I can't do any more than just ask you, beg you," he said. Just to keep it together, you can do it. It's within your power. Everyone, Hells Angels, everybody, let's just keep ourselves together. Still, the crowd pressed on, and Hunter, with his bright lime green suit, could be spotted in the crowd. After a few minutes of calm, the band started performing again. This time, Hunter climbed up a speaker box next to the stage. He then got into a scuffle with the Hells Angels on guard and was chased back into the crowd, wherefore other angels descended on him. After a few minutes, Hunter, who had been high on drugs, angrily returned to the front of the stage. He was so furious that his girlfriend, Patty Breedhoft, tearfully begged him to move farther back into the crowd with her. From the footage captured, Hunter was seen suddenly lunging at someone in the crowd, drawing what appeared to be a revolver, and pointing it in the air. Then, a man wearing a Hells Angels uniform is seen rushing at the teenager with his hand raised, holding what was later identified as a knife. The Hells Angels member, identified as Alan Posoro, proceeded to stab Hunter twice. By the time Hunter's body was recovered, he had been stabbed 5 times in the upper back and was stomped upon by other Hells Angels members. The footage then cuts to Hunter's girlfriend crying at the sight of her boyfriend's body being wrapped up by medical examiners at the scene. In total, 4 people died at the concert, 2 by a hit-and-run car accident and 1 by an LSD-induced drowning in an irrigation canal. The stabbing of Meredith Hunter gave the Hells Angels a bad reputation as a violent group, and this was worsened after Alan Posoro, the member who had stabbed Hunter, was acquitted of the crime on grounds of self-defense. This was just one of the many instances where the Hells Angels proved to be deadly. Jay Dobbins, in an interview, also talked about how a woman had been murdered by the Hells Angels in Mesa, Arizona. The Hells Angels in Mesa had murdered a woman, an innocent woman. They was in their clubhouse, right? Yeah, they basically recruited her off the street to come to a party. The party got out of hand. She mouthed off in the wrong place at the wrong time. Man, you don't talk on these dudes in their clubhouse, and you don't insult them. He then narrated what the club did to her. She took a beating in the Mesa clubhouse. They beat her down and then they stuffed her in the trunk of a car and drove her from Mesa out to Apache Junction, Arizona, which is further east, and cut her head off. These notable events showed how brutal the Hells Angels could be when faced with what was perceived to be disrespect or even betrayal. No matter how they try to assert their innocence, the Hells Angels have created a bad reputation among law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Their members are constantly caught up in robberies, extortion, drug dealing, murder, gun running, and even prostitution operations. The truth is, you never can know what goes on behind the scenes of this motorcycle club unless you join, and clearly, becoming a member comes with a heavy price. Unless you are bold enough, the tragic fate of leaving the Hells Angels can be greatly terrifying, and if you are not careful, it can cost all that you hold dearly. When a prospect becomes a full-fledged member, they get a vest with the famous logo and name on the back. If one of the bikers gets arrested, he'll hand his vest to a fellow member to avoid tainting it in jail. If they get hurt and need an emergency procedure, they'll do whatever possible to prevent the vest from being cut or torn off. They have a dress code. The guidelines on this one vary a bit from chapter to chapter. Some are not even allowed to wear shorts, no matter how hot it gets. The most common are charters who wear all black, some allow blue jeans and camouflage patterns. The color and design codes can help distinguish which charter they belong to. There's an order that they ride in. The road captain and charter president remain at the front of the group. From there, the bikers align based on seniority and rank. The older members will stay closer to the front, followed by newer members and ending with prospects in the back. They all pull over together. If one of them gets pulled over by a cop, they all stop, a bit intimidating for the cop, I'm sure. It signifies how the brotherhood is linked like family. If you mess with one Hells Angel, you mess with them all. They can't work for a prison. Given the Hells Angels' history with law enforcement, they aren't allowed to work for a prison while in the group. Members also cannot be police officers due to the conflict of interest. The group stands for freedom in the sense that they run by their own rules, so prison guards and law enforcement officers are out of the question. You can't share information about fellow members. If a member were to rat out a fellow brother, they could expect to get kicked out of the group. The Hells Angels website clearly states, "We do not answer questions about members, not even missing ones." Once a Hells Angel, always a Hells Angel. Once you're an official Hells Angel, there's no backing out. Members don't retire, and the only time they exit the group is if they're kicked out for breaking a rule. Your charter essentially becomes a second family. When one of them passes away, everyone unites to honor the memory of their fallen brother. No talking to the media. Since the Hells Angels are very secretive in their activities, none of them are allowed to talk to the media. Harleys only. To be a Hells Angel you must own a Harley Davidson. Riding only Harleys is a Hells Angels tradition that runs along the same lines as the sacred vest. It holds value because it's a part of what makes them who they are. They ride thousands of miles a year together. According to their website, the Hells Angels ride around 12,000 miles together every year. While Hells Angels are like brothers, their connection is founded on their shared love of motorcycles. They'll happily spend hours on the road. Show up to club events. Members who fail to show up to meetings and hangouts indicate to others that they are missing the point of the club. The Biker Brotherhood is known for having a strict attendance code. Those who continually miss events are seen as disrespectful and are not likely to make it past the hanging around phase of recruitment. It's a brotherhood, not a sisterhood. Hells Angels refers to itself as a brotherhood. Thus, you'll only see men with the death head insignias on their back. Though women aren't technically in the club, they do play a major role in it. Many of the Hells Angels have wives and families. If he's going to be a part of the crew, then his partner has to understand the commitment and be okay with the lifestyle and all that comes with it. The Hells Angels official website attributes the official Death's Head insignia design to Frank Sardileg, past president of the San Francisco Charter. The colors and shape of the Erle-style jacket emblem, before 1953, were copied from the insignias of the 85th Fighter Squadron and the 552nd Medium Bomber Squadron. The Hells Angels have a system of patches similar to military medals. The specific meaning of each patch is not publicly known, but the patches identify each biker's specific or significant actions or beliefs. The official colors of the Hells Angels are red lettering displayed on a white background, hence the club's nickname, the Red and White. The patches are worn on leather or denim jackets and vests. Red and white are also used to display the number 81 on many patches, as in Support 81, Route 81. The 8 and 1 stand for the respective positions in the alphabet of H and A. Friends and supporters of the club use these in deference to club rules, which purport to restrict the wearing of Hells Angels imagery to club members. The diamond-shaped 1%er patch is also used, displaying 1% in red on a white background with a red merrowed border. The term 1%er is said to be a response to the American Motorcyclist Association (AMA) comment on the Hollister incident to the effect that 99% of motorcyclists were law-abiding citizens and 1% were outlaws. The AMA has no record of such a statement and calls this story apocryphal. Most members wear a rectangular patch, again, white background with red letters and a red merrowed border, identifying their respective charter locations. Another similarly designed patch reads, Hells Angels. When applicable, members of the club wear a patch denoting their position or rank within the organization. The patch is rectangular and, like those described above, displays a white background with red letters and a red merrowed border. Some examples of the titles used are President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, and Sergeant at Arms. This patch is usually worn above the charter location patch. Some members also wear an AFFA patch, which stands for Angels Forever, Forever Angels, referring to their lifelong membership in the club. An additional patch worn by select club members consists of two Nazi-style SS lightning bolts below the words, Filthy Few. Some law enforcement officials claim that the Filthy Few patch is awarded only to those who have committed or are prepared to commit murder on the club's behalf. Hells Angels have denied this interpretation, however, comparing it instead to a merit badge awarded to those who are the first to arrive at a party and the last to leave. According to reports from law enforcement and prosecutors, another patch similar to the Filthy Few patch is the Dequiallo patch. Dequiallo is a reference to El Deguello, a bugle call played by the regimental band of Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna's army at the Battle of the Alamo. This patch allegedly signifies that the wearer has fought law enforcement on arrest. There is no common convention as to where the patches are placed on members' jackets or vests. Angels Forever, Forever Angels is also the club's traditional motto. Other Hells Angels slogans include, When we do right, nobody remembers. When we do wrong, nobody forgets, 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead, and, when in doubt, knock 'em out, which was coined by New York City Charter member Vincent Big Vinny Girolamo. The Hells Angels incorporated in 1966, trademarking the club's name and 4 symbols. The club filed a trademark infringement lawsuit for the first time on October 26, 1989, when the Hells Angels lodged a federal lawsuit in Los Angeles against Concord New Horizons, which produced the film Nam Angels, and against Media Home Entertainment, which distributed the film on video, over infringements on the club's registered trademarks. The suit was settled out of court. According to the Globe and Mail, the Hells Angels considered seeking an injunction to block the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation from broadcasting the miniseries The Last Chapter, because of how closely the biker gang at the center of the series resembled the Hells Angels. Tension filled the air, thick enough to choke on. The Outlaws weren't happy, not one bit, and Mel knew it was only a matter of time before the powder keg exploded. Every day became a waiting game, a test of nerves. Mel's brothers looked to him for guidance and strength, but even he had his doubts and fears. Still, he couldn't show weakness, not now. Mel tightened security, ran drills, and prepared for the worst. But what kept us strong was the unity we had with each other. We had a young crew, me being the youngest, Mel reflected. Most of the guys trained back then. There was no MMA, so we were just up pounding on the bags. You had to make sure you were in shape, but you couldn't be so big that you couldn't fight in a bar. Nothing could have prepared them for what came next. June 13, 1994, was a date that would be etched in blood and fire. The Hells Angels clubhouse, their sanctuary and home, was reduced to rubble in an instant. 100 pounds of C4 explosives had delivered a message written in destruction. They put 100 pounds of C4 in a car, shaped it, and drove it up. Our clubhouse was on Grand Avenue, a busy street, and it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, middle of the week. Traffic was going by and everything. They built the bomb in the trunk of this car. By some miracle, no one was inside when the bomb went off. But the message was crystal clear: this was war. Mel stood in the debris, rage boiling inside him. The next move was his, and it would change everything. Retaliation came swift and merciless. Mel knew the rules, an eye for an eye. But this was beyond that, this was an all-out war. We were doing that tit-for-tat thing, Mel said. It became personal. We were running into each other's bars and doing stuff like that. But then, with the bombings, it turned the game around. That was the first of a few that happened. He gathered his most trusted lieutenants, planning in secret. No half measures, no mercy, no survivors. The streets of Chicago ran red as chaos reigned supreme. Shootings, bombings, brutal beatings, no one was safe. We had no clue, man. These guys were using bombs and remote starts. We didn't know how to do that, so we had to figure it out. We were still trying to run into the bars and fight hand-to-hand as they were finding us. The cops were overwhelmed, and soon the feds took notice. But Mel couldn't stop, he wouldn't stop. Every attack fueled his rage and determination. In the 90s, it got crazy with the bombings and shootings. It went from playground fights to shooting on motorcycles. We had to keep our guys safe. I have the tombstones tattooed on my arms for the brothers that got killed in that war. When you see a brother you're tight with lying in a casket, and his 16-year-old daughter is saying goodbye and rubbing her father's hair for the last time, it hits different. As the war dragged on, Mel's reputation grew. He was feared on the streets and respected in the underworld, but he was also a prime target for rival gangs and law enforcement alike. The pressure was mounting from all sides. In the midst of the chaos, I never lost sight of my goal: to make the Chicago Hells Angels the most powerful club in the Midwest. But as the body count rose and the feds closed in, I started to wonder if the price of power was too high. I remember standing at the casket with a few brothers, putting his patch over him before we closed it. His daughter's goodbye brought tears to my eyes. I thought, we did this. Our decisions led to this. How do you say, time out, in a war like this? You don't. You just go with the flow and be part of the environment created around you. Little did Mel know, the biggest battle of his life was yet to come, and it wouldn't be fought on the streets but in a courtroom. The war had caught the attention of forces far beyond Chicago, and they were about to bring the full weight of the law down on Mel Chancey and his brothers. Brothers, the fall. Blue lights and sirens pierced the night, the law was closing in. Mel knew it was coming. But when you have 2 bombings on one day, that's something they had never seen before. After we hit their clubhouse, that was the full court press. That's when the government came in and said, hey, no more of this. Violence on violence, biker violence on biker violence, they don't like, but it's passable. But when you start Beiruting the city, they come with the full court press. The feds swarmed everywhere, kicking down doors and making arrests. The magic word was RICO, the club's worst nightmare came to life. At the time, Janet Reno was the US Attorney General. We all knew she was no nonsense. She put a team together and said, get both sides. That's how the RICO investigation started. It put the city on edge. She nicknamed the operation Operation Lucifer, and put the full court press on us and the outlaws. In 1997, the first RICO indictments hit, and they targeted the outlaws first. They had them on predicate acts, fighting us, the bombing. The guy who placed the bomb flipped for the government later in life, giving them the full story of what happened. Before the indictment hit the Hells Angels, Mel received a 4-year sentence for beating up a DJ who was abusing his ex-girlfriend. I went to prison in '98 for beating that guy up. Remember DS story in the house? I beat the guy who was abusing my ex-girlfriend. I kind of took it to a level, and I got a 4-year sentence for that one. So, I'm in state prison in '98, knowing that the RICO case is being put together against us. I'm hearing the buzz from the streets, with people telling me they're building this RICO case on us. Mel watched his empire crumble as brother turned on brother. One of the Hell's henchmen, who hadn't made it to the Angel side, flipped. He was a good friend of Mel's, and Mel didn't know he had turned. Mel was the target. His name was Jim, and the authorities told Jim, "We want Mel." Plea deals and witness protection programs shattered the old code of silence. But Mel wouldn't break, he couldn't. Even as the evidence mounted and the charges piled up, he stood firm, a captain going down with his ship. The trial was a media circus, with Mel at the center. He remained defiant to the end, but the verdict was never really in doubt, guilty on all counts. So, I pled guilty to mail fraud and got 18 months. The day I was released from the state penitentiary, I went into the Sally Port. They switched my handcuffs, and the marshals picked me up and took me to a federal holding facility, then designated me to a federal prison. I really did back-to-back sentences. As they led him away in chains, Mel couldn't help but wonder, was it all worth it? All the blood, all the sacrifice, for what? A patch, a reputation, or something more, something he couldn't yet see. As Mel's sentence neared its end, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon. In late 2000, Mel Chancey walked out of federal prison a free man once more. Chicago's own outlaw motorcycle club, the Hell's Henchmen, was where Mel found his tribe. But respect had to be earned the hard way. They said, you know, the stories. The same guys that showed me how to train heavy and crazy were the same guys that showed me how to do the motorcycle lifestyle. Wow. That's how I stepped into that world. He started as a prospect, the lowest of the low, cleaning, running errands, and taking orders from everyone. It wasn't glamorous, but Mel didn't complain. He had something to prove, not just to the club but to himself and the world. "How old are you now?" they asked. I said, "It's only been a year and some change. I'm 19. "Man, you're going to age rough. You look older. You want to come in the club?" "I do." "Okay, come on. Let's make it official. You become an official hangaround and a prospect, and then you get voted for your patch." Yeah, so that's how it happened, and that's what I did. I was very eager. When Mel got into that world, he wanted to learn everything about it. He worked harder, trained harder, fought harder. His fists did the talking, and people started listening. Rivals learned to fear him, and brothers learned to trust him. But in that world comes the nonsense, the violence, the tit-for-tat with other clubs. I was into that part. Those guys showed me the violent side of the lifestyle. Slowly but surely, Mel climbed the ranks of the Hell's Henchmen. The older members watched, sizing him up. Was this kid for real, or just another wannabe? Mel's dedication was put to the test time and time again. He ran errands that often skirted the edge of legality. I would be out every night as a prospect, doing all this stuff. I stood watch during deals that I knew better than to ask about. And when rival gangs came knocking, I was always first in line to defend my brothers. Learned it fast and I watched it, Mel said. I watched how some of these guys came right in, and when it was time to fight and throw hands, there was no question about it. Finally, after months of grueling tests and trials, the moment Mel had been waiting for arrived. They called him to the front of the clubhouse. The air was thick with anticipation. The president, a grizzled old biker with more scars than teeth, looked Mel up and down. For a moment, the world stood still. Then, with a gruff nod, he handed Mel his colors. Mel Chancey was now a full-patch member of the Hell's Henchmen. "I got my patch right before I was 21, Mel recalled. As he donned the jacket for the first time, feeling the weight of the patches on his back, Mel knew his life had changed forever. But this was just the beginning. The real test lay ahead. So when I finally was in the club and got my patch, it was probably not even 6 to 8 months later when I became our Sergeant-at-Arms. What challenges awaited? What sacrifices would be required? I did that for a long time, Mel said. And then finally, when I got in the club and started seeing what guys were doing, I thought, man, this working for a living is pretty brutal here. I'm trying to work 10-hour days in the hot sun and then hang out all night and go on trips. This is a little crazy. That's when I learned the cocaine game. Back then, in the 80s, it was huge. I saw guys making $2,000 a week, and I thought, wow, they're not killing themselves here. So I went in. The road was long, and it was about to get bumpy. But Mel was ready, or at least he thought he was. A year that would change everything for Mel and his brothers. Whispers in the wind spoke of something big coming down the pipeline. The Hells Angels, the most notorious motorcycle club in the world, wanted in on Chicago turf. It was an offer the Hells Henchmen couldn't refuse, but it came at a heavy price. Mel, now the youngest president in the club's history at just 23, recalled the moment. One day, I walked into a meeting. I was a few minutes late. If you're late, you call up, "Hey man, I got stuck by a train. I'm a few minutes late, pardon me, I'm right there." I walked into the meeting, and everybody was in there. They said, "Hey, Road. Listen, man, we took a vote, and you're not the Sergeant at Arms anymore." I said, "Really? How could you guys take a vote without me being here? How are you bringing this up to me without me being there? I'm not the Sergeant at Arms? Man, I bleed this chapter. What are you talking about?" That's when Jerry, his name was, said to me, "Hey man, we nominated you to be the president." I was like, "What? Wow, man." In 1994, we switched from being the Hells Henchmen to becoming the Hells Angels. We were talking to the Hells Angels, and one of the henchmen was in the penitentiary with an angel out of Minnesota. They had a good relationship, and at that time, the Hells Angels were never in the Midwest. It was Minnesota, then nothing, and then Ohio. There was that big gap with no Hells Angels, and we were the opportunity. The war was coming, the Outlaws, Chicago's dominant club, wouldn't stand for it, not in their backyard. Once we decided to become Hells Angels, it changed the game in the history of Chicago. The Outlaws, that was their hometown. In the end, the vote was cast. The Hells Henchmen were no more. Long live the Hells Angels. The patchover ceremony was a solemn affair, tinged with both excitement and apprehension. As they donned the infamous death head patch, Mel couldn't help but wonder, had they just signed their death warrants, or was this the beginning of something greater? The Chicago chapter of the Hells Angels was born, with Mel at its helm. But the real challenge was just beginning. The Outlaws weren't going to roll over without a fight. Things got gritty when we switched over to become Hells Angels, Mel said. The Outlaws, who were the dominant Midwest motorcycle club at the time, had been at war with the Hells Angels since the late 60s. 69-70 did not like that, and when they found out we were doing that merge, we sat down with them at a table while we were still henchmen. We told them, yes, we are going Hells Angel, and we are doing this move. We were in a restaurant, 6 guys from our side and 6 from theirs. That's when they got up from the table and said, "Well, there's no more discussions here, boys. We'll see you when we see you." I knew it was live then because those dudes were serious. Mel knew he'd have to be smart, tough, and maybe a little bit lucky to navigate the storm that was coming. His leadership was put to the test almost immediately. As he looked around at his brothers, their new patches gleaming in the dim light of the clubhouse, Mel felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. These men were trusting him with their lives, their freedom, their very futures. He silently vowed not to let them down. Little did Mel know, the decisions he'd make in the coming months and years would test that vow to its very limits. The Chicago streets were about to become a battleground, and Mel Chansey was standing right in the crosshairs. He never ran a charter. He never wore a patch. Yet somehow, Dave Mann became the lens through which the outlaw world came into focus. Long before documentaries, podcasts, or tell-all memoirs, there were his centerfolds, 30 years of Easy Riders spread steeped in smoke, chrome, and silence. Mann painted bikers as they wanted to be seen, not as criminals, but as ghosts, cowboys, knights, wolves. Outlaws with codes. Loners with pride. Machines as their horses. Some critics said he revealed too much. Others swore he made bikers look better than they deserved. But Mann didn't take sides. He painted what he saw and let the world wrestle with it. He wasn't chasing legend. He was preserving one. This is the story of the man behind the mythology, and the cost of keeping it alive. Biker World's Mythmaker. Before he became the Biker World's Mythmaker, Dave Mann was just a Kansas City kid with a paintbrush and an eye for chrome. Motorcycles weren't his first obsession, custom cars were. By his late teens, he was spraying paint in auto shops and sketching hot rods anywhere he could find space. Women, wheels, flames. It was style without story, until the story came looking for him. In 1963, Mann brought a handful of canvases to the Kansas City Custom Car Show. One stood out, Hollywood Run. The painting stopped Tom Fugel, a biker with an artist's eye, dead in his tracks. He snapped a photo of the piece and sent it to Ed Big Daddy Roth, publisher of Choppers magazine. Roth didn't hesitate, he commissioned Mann for a poster series. It was Mann's first national stage, and his first taste of the biker world's loyalty. Dave poured himself into the Roth series, nearly 30 posters in all. Look closely at one of those mid-60s prints and you'll spot his hidden signature, tucked into the frame of a bike. By 1965, he wasn't just painting bikers, he was riding with them. He joined El Forastero Motorcycle Club, becoming a founding member of its Kansas City charter. What began as observation turned into immersion. His sketchbook never left his side. In 1971, Mann answered a small ad in the back of a new magazine. Easy Riders was looking for a motorcycle artist. His submission was accepted. By 1973, his work had claimed the center spread, a place it would hold every month for the next 3 decades. But Mann wasn't selling a fantasy. He painted contradictions. Lone riders mirrored against medieval knights. Choppers haunted by gunfighters. Surreal highways with ghostly passengers. Cops lurking in judgment. Husbands seething with jealousy. His art didn't flatter, didn't flirt, it told the truth. By the mid-1970s, Dave Mann had given outlaw bikers a visual language they couldn't escape. His work filled garages, clubhouses, tattoo shops, and bedrooms. Some embraced the reflection. Others felt exposed. He didn't soften edges. He didn't ask permission. He just kept painting, because he wasn't documenting rebellion. He was building its mythology, one brushstroke at a time. By the early 1970s, Dave Mann had become the visual identity of Easy Riders. Every month, the centerfold carried his painted stories, dreamlike, symbolic, and soaked in exhaust. He never recycled an idea. He never rushed a line. His work was precise, surreal, and loaded with meaning. A biker beside a ghostly knight, a trucker squaring off with a cop, lovers in motion, enemies cast in chrome. Mann wasn't just part of the magazine. He became part of its crew. He built close bonds inside the biker world, though those same bonds often drew him into conflict. At one point, he was petitioned to design a poster for the film Hell's Angels Forever. The project unraveled in controversy over ownership and control, but Mann's poster, Busting Out, survived. Today, it's considered a rare piece of his legacy. To most readers, Dave was untouchable, the artist who gave outlaw bikers their myth. But inside clubhouses, feelings were more complicated. His paintings didn't just capture the culture, they captured them, the clothes, the stares, the unspoken tension. Some believed he lifted faces and moments straight from runs, meetings, and stories that were never meant to leave the Brotherhood. And worse, he made them beautiful. One of his early works depicted a brawl on Ventura Beach, an actual fight, reimagined in oil and color. To outsiders it looked like art. To insiders, it was memory exposed. Quiet questions started to circulate. Was Dave showing too much? Was he getting too close to outsiders? Was he mythologizing what should have remained unspoken? No one confronted him directly, but the respect became cautious. Some called him loyal. Others whispered he was dangerous. He heard both, and kept painting. His allegiance to the El Forasteros was never doubted, but when he helped form a new charter with Tom Fugel, tension followed. Accounts differ, some say he walked away, others say he was pushed. What's certain is that he left the club on bad terms, with heavy criticism aimed at his work. Many bikers thought his centerfolds revealed too much of the outlaw world. Still, the paintings kept coming. Bolder. More symbolic. More layered. His art shifted from documenting culture to reflecting it, the outlaw as cowboy, as ghost, as legend and contradiction. That duality became his signature, and his risk. An insider with outsider reach. Some bikers hid his posters. Others framed them proudly. The unease around his work deepened. Rumors spread, some even muttered about cutting off his painting hand. Whether true or not, Mann never addressed it. He never slowed down. He knew what he was doing, not just painting motorcycles, but painting what it felt like to live beyond the rules, even if it meant burning bridges with the very men he rode beside. In the end, it wasn't betrayal or backlash that silenced Dave Mann. It was his body. By the early 2000s, his health was failing. He held on as long as he could, every new centerfold another act of loyalty, another month stitching the mythology together. In 2003, after 30 years of uninterrupted work, he finally set down the brush. The following year, Just one day after his 64th birthday, Dave Mann died. But his tribute had already begun. Orange County Choppers was building a custom bike in his honor, styled in Mann's sweeping lines, with fire airbrushed across the frame, a rolling canvas of the stories he told without words. He never lived to see it completed. The episode aired with his name on it. Dave Mann had not just painted rebellion. He had kept its mythology alive. The bike rolled on without him, and in that moment, the man who had painted legends became one himself. His ashes were destined for a Harley Sportster XLCH, finished in a shade known only as Dave Mann Red. It was fitting. His work was never meant to sit quietly on walls. It was built to move, to live, to ride.